Welcome into the roundtable. I'm Brad Wakai. That is my co-host Tyson Gentry. We have an absolutely massive show today, Tyson. We are breaking down what the hell just happened in the NFL this weekend because it was crazy. And then we're going to get into a little bit of who's good, who's bad. But first, we're just going to jump right into the Monday night beatdown that just took place. The Eagles looked dominant against the Vikings. The Bills looked absolutely incredible against the Titans. But we're Eagles fans. So naturally, Tyson, we are going to start with the Philadelphia Eagles against the Minnesota Vikings today. Just go ahead and start ripping your thoughts because we haven't talked before we got on here tonight.
That was Jalen Hurts' best game as a pro, I think by a mile. I think you can go back to like his first four and look at the numbers and be like, oh, well, he played better than that. This was awesome. This was the best he's ever played. It was really easy all over the field for all the Eagles receivers. Nick Sirianni looked great, and the Eagles blitzed, Brad. Next step is all of a sudden Hassan Reddick just can't be playing coverage linebacker, and then we're really in business. This team's good, dude. This was the most this was the best I've felt after a win since the end of 2018, probably.
I completely agree with you. In terms of the Jalen Hurts thing, I mean, coming in here, we both were talking. The only thing about this roster and this team is the question mark around Jalen Hurts. Well, if he plays like he played tonight for the rest of the season, which is going to be hard to do, this team's a Super Bowl contender. I mean, he looked incredible. And it wasn't just, hey, scrambled out of the pocket. No, he was stepping up in the pocket. He was taking hits in the chest and delivering money shots. It was crazy how good he looked tonight.
I just want to point out the fact that you had the Vikings going to the NFC Championship. So where does that put the Eagles?
I think I'm holding the Eagles NFC Championship ticket as well. If you watched our gambling show for the listeners out there, but I mean, power rankings, Eagles are, what in the NFC third right now? I mean, Bucks probably number one based on that defense, and then who? I mean, we got to give respect to the Rams, but it's not like they've looked great.
Right. Yeah, you run through the list, right? The Cowboys without Dak, yeah, right. They're kind of out. The Niners with Jimmy back are interesting.
Very.
Granted, the Seahawks I think showed closer to who they really were than when they played the Broncos, but it's
True.
like the Bucks, and if you give the Rams a respect, then yeah.
Packers maybe just because it's Rodgers.
But we thought maybe the Vikings were the team that was going to jump into that tier, just like we thought a year ago the Saints might be the team that jumped in because they beat the Packers week one. We did this shit again, and now everybody's going to be like, Kirk Cousins still doesn't have it. He never did. He just decided that this was going to be the ceiling, and yeah, it's week two, and things can turn around. But there were no adjustments made by Minnesota on the defensive side of the football for 60 minutes. Philadelphia was able to do pretty much whatever they wanted. They ended up behind the chains a lot based on, mostly they got stuff to the line of scrimmage a couple times, but they just had silly penalties that put them down the line of scrimmage. There was 15 illegal man downfield penalties in this game, I think, between the two teams. That was ridiculous. But look, at the end of the day, the Eagles just shut down what we figured to be a very prolific passing attack this season, at least the most prolific receiver in the NFL in week one, and one of the probably five most in the NFL if we're going to go over the whole year. And that was what they couldn't do a year ago. And so that is the encouraging thing here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it wasn't just making Justin Jefferson have a quiet night. Dalvin Cook was a non-factor, running the ball and receiving the ball. 19 receiving yards, under 30 rushing yards. Just completely taken out of his football game. And this is for an Eagles team last year that got gashed on the ground by the Lions. Now, I think the Lions probably have a better offensive line than what the Vikings are working with right now. For those who watch the game, they put up the stat. Jason Kelce has more starts than the entire Vikings offensive line. So
that shit was nutty.
And the Eagles are going to get tested, in that front. And I think we'll see more of that. But for them to go in tonight on a nationally televised game against the Vikings coming off a huge win over the Packers, and for Jalen Hurts to play as well as he did to start, and for the defense to carry them in the second half, super, super impressive performance, especially, by a second-year head coach, Nick Sirianni, who, people have questions about still for some reason. By a defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, who last year his defense got picked apart. And then by an offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, who last year, everybody said they're just super one-dimensional. All they do is run the football. Looks like this this entire coaching staff is growing with this team. It's super impressive to watch, and sky's the limit for where this roster can go, I think.
Well, it's almost like when you have rookie Devonta Smith as your number one wide receiver, it's tough to throw the ball
Yeah.
right? But all of a sudden you get AJ Brown,
Mm.
and it gets easier to throw the ball. And obviously, Jalen Hurts got better. At least it looks like he got a lot better if you judge by tonight. But they just added weapons, and so now it's like we get to see the full scope of what. And Troy Aikman said it tonight. He's like, the play sheet's probably a mile long because they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And I think that's the scary thing about the Eagles. At one point in the game, I think they had 24 runs and 22 passes and 400 yards of total offense. If you ask 32 coaches in the NFL if they could draw up a perfect game, it'd be pretty close to that.
And I do want to shout out Miles Sanders too, man, because he's had some injury issues and it's kind of some question marks. Like, hey, man, if you got to stay healthy, Boston Scott always gets positive yards. Gainwell's a tough runner. With Sanders kind of getting phased out. Well, I thought the first few games of this season he's been great.
And he's fighting for extra effort. And he found the end zone, right? Which is the first time in like a year and a half that happened. And we talk about it on here. It's funny and stuff, but finding the end zone is at least a little bit of a skill. At least a little bit.
Sure.
Because they're the guys like DJ Moore and Jacoby Myers and these guys who year over year don't score touchdowns. It's not for lack of opportunity. The opportunity essentially stays the same. They struggle to get in the end zone. Miles Sanders got in the end zone early, which is a great sign for Eagles fans. And it's a great sign for the coaching staff, too, because hopefully later in the season, it's not all quarterback powers on the goal line. And we can, if you're Philadelphia, use Miles Sanders between the 20s. And Boston Scott, for some reason, is the goal line back. We'll see, actually, if they end up adding a power back. But to me, so far, the hype looks real.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And it's a great start for the Eagles. And Joe Buck kind of laid it out in the broadcast. Like, you look at the schedule at Washington, who struggled against the Lions and who's a big question mark, at Arizona, who, I mean, again, that team's a joke right now. I mean, I know they had this big crazy comeback, which we'll talk about later in the show, but how good is Arizona really? And then you got the Cowboys with Cooper Rush starting and then a bye week. It's an early bye week, but I mean, this is a great start for the Eagles, who had a ton of hype coming in, and they've answered the call so far.
How sick does that feel to say? How awesome!
Oh, it feels
awesome
great, man. And you know what? I was.
You got it.
No, go ahead.
I don't have anything important to say. Most of my stuff's just filler.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I was kind of nervous going to this game, Tyson, because the Giants, they got their whatever wins and yada yada, and I was like, God, man, if the Giants are 2-0 and the Eagles, lose this game, which is, looked to be a tough opponent, 1-1, I'm gonna have to look at the Giants leading that division when I know their wins are fucking bullshit. I was gonna be pissed.
I saw somebody today said, "Are the Giants the worst 2-0 team ever?" And it was like, shut the fuck up, dude.
Yeah, let's start quantifying that now. Yeah, that's a good idea.
What does that mean?
Well, on the flip side, though, I mean, another team who's absolutely answered all the preseason hype is the Buffalo Bills. I mean, they went out to LA on ceremony night, just absolutely stomped the Rams. And then they come in at home opener and just knock around the Titans. Like, it made them look like a JV squad. Like, it was impressive. I mean, 41-7, the final score there. Josh Allen was ridiculous again. 317 and 4 touchdowns. Just perfect offense. Stephon Diggs, 12 receptions, 150 and 3 touch. Like, they do whatever they want on offense. So it is super, super impressive, this Bills team. I just kept kind of give me your early thoughts. I mean, there's not much to say about the Bills, besides they're awesome, but I guess just kind of give me your thoughts on where we're at with the Bills and where we could potentially see this team go.
Well, the Bills are hitting. Like, they're flying around, they're hitting people, offense and defense. And that is what's going to carry them through the season, because not every team is going to be somebody you can put up 40 points on. Yeah, their offense is a machine, but that's just not the way. The NFL doesn't work. Even the 17-0 Patriots or 16-0 when 07 when they lost the Super Bowl, there were 3, 4, 5 games that year. I think the Eagles, the Giants, a couple other teams made them work. And so you have to find creative ways to beat people. And a really good way to beat somebody is into submission. And that's what the Bills have done over the first 2 weeks of the season. And yeah, they've been lighting it up on offense, but when it's touchdown Bills, 3 and out, touchdown Bills, then it gets real tough.
Yeah.
It gets real tough to come back. And I am looking at that defense, and I'm pretty sure that if you can rush 4 and get home, you can play defense like this all year long.
And then especially when you have the secondary they have. I mean, Micah Hyde's a stud. He got a little banged up tonight. Poyer's had an interception.
Trey White's just waiting.
And he's not even back. It's crazy.
Just waiting.
They have 2 rookies on the edge, Tyson. This is insanity what we're watching here. And to your point, like, they are physical. this is what McDermott wanted out of his football team. He thought that's what they're lacking last year.
To this point in the season, and this is a weird question, but from top to bottom, do the Bills look like the best coach team? Not just like at the head coach position, but position. Everybody's firing. They came out with, I mean, they're sending messages. Like that's what they're here to do. They came out prepared. The Rams didn't come out prepared.
No.
The Bucks didn't really. They don't feel like they've come out like of their shell yet, right? I mean, they're the team at the top of the league. The Chiefs,
you could say the Chiefs probably.
That's the only other one. And I think the Bills have that circled. They want to play the Chiefs pretty bad.
I don't blame them. I think they're a better roster. I think anybody would say that. And to your point, yeah, I mean they look the most prepared. They look super confident too. And that's the thing. Like Von Miller coming out in a Josh Allen MVP shirt. I mean, we're talking about a guy who just won a Super Bowl, who's a and the defensive player of the year back in the day, probably going to be a Hall of Famer. And he comes over and he just knows, hey, this is Josh Allen's team. Feels like everybody knows what their role is too. And that's a big thing, especially in a star-studded league like this. You can get selfish, man. Diggs is getting 12 catches. I think it helps that Gabe Davis was out tonight. There's a little less mouths to feed, but Dawson Knox had 1 catch in the game in the first week. Tonight he had 5 or 6, whatever it was. He was patient. He knew his time was going to come. He knew Josh Allen was going to find him. I think that goes to the coaching point that you made too. These guys are all bought in. And they could have easily pouted and put their head down. Woe is us after that loss last year. From my point of view, what I've seen so far, they don't feel sorry for themselves. They haven't felt sorry for themselves. They put their head down and they've gone to fucking work. And it's been impressive.
I saw a Ringer article today. I think it was the Ringer. It was like 3 teams or 0 teams last year came back from 20 points down with like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter or whatever. That happened 3 times this week. And so the NFL's a little wonky this year, right? And Buffalo just kicked the shit out of 2. Well, we'll get into the Titans. 1 really good team and the Titans. And they did it for 60 minutes straight. Like there's no let up in these guys. They were pick 6 and with 7 minutes left in the game.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Super impressive tonight. Monday night beatdown. Bills win 41-7. Eagles win 24-7, and it wasn't that close. Let's get into those insane endings, Tyson. It was actually just nuts what was taking place in the early part of the window. I mean, I thought Scott Hansen, if you don't watch on Red Zone, I thought he was going to have a heart attack with what was going on.
Buzzing.
Woof.
He's going nuts. And it's perfect, too, because when they cut in between the 4 games and he has to announce one on every screen, that's the best because he has to remind you 2 to 3 times that he's doing this so you can understand what's going on. But he's just nailing it, man. And it's so much fun. I've watched the Andrew Siciliano Red Zone.
Back in the day, right?
He's good, right? But it's a Scott Hansen show. It's got to be.
Absolutely. And so if you're like, what happened? I'm locked into my local team, local market, and you kind of heard maybe, well, we'll kind of give you the synopsis and break down, kind of the insanity here. Jets down 14 or down 13 with 1:44 to go. Kareem Hunt, or they're up 7. Kareem Hunt could have stayed in bounds, but he scores a touchdown. Cade York misses the extra point. Chubb. Is that what it was? It was Chubb.
Because he never does it. That's why it stuck out so much in my head. He's the guy to stay in bounds.
That was his 3rd touchdown. That's what it was. Right.
Yep.
So the Jets are down 13 after the missed field goal with 1:44 left. They score a touchdown, get the onside kick, and Joe Flacco leads them down to a win. That was one of the crazy things. Dolphins are down 21 points in the fourth quarter, and Tua goes nuts. We'll talk about him in a bit, but they win the game 42-38 over the Ravens, who were in massive control at halftime and pretty much the entire game. And then in the late window, the Cardinals were down It was 20-0 at halftime. They scored 23 unanswered points to go to overtime, then win on a fumble 6. Like it was crazy too. Like they were on the 5-yard line for like 7 plays in a row.
Yeah, that was, nobody out Raiders the Raiders. The Cardinals tried, but nobody can do it, right? No. And as far as all the insane innings go, they were perfect because it was a mix. It was like we have up-and-coming teams, we have up-and-coming players. Garrett Wilson really, like Joe Flacco was the one, obviously, that leads the comeback. He hit Corey Davis on a bomb. But they don't win that game without Garrett Wilson going nuts, right? And this is just a little nugget. It doesn't mean anything. But Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, and A.J. Brown never had any more. They never had more than 12 targets, I think it is, in their rookie year. and Garrett Wilson just got 14 in his second career game. So maybe the dude's going to be a monster, basically, is what I'm saying. And then so we go from there. And then we have Lamar Jackson playing a perfect football game in Baltimore. You can't play better than that. Pro Football Focus gave him a grade of 66, I saw. He threw for like 300 yards, 3 tuds, no turnovers, ran for 170 or something in the touchdown, and he gets a 66.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter because Tua threw for 468 and 6. And we'll talk about it a little bit, but the main takeaway I have from that game, Brad, is Tyreek Hill had 11 catches for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Waddle had 11 catches for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. If you're Baltimore and you're Harbaugh and you're in there this weekend and you're looking at the coaching staff, you got to ask how 2 guys combined for 360 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns against you. It's unreal.
Yeah, and the concern, and the secondary's banged up a bit. The concern was speed, right, with this Ravens team. Well, they got all the speed they could ask for, and they couldn't handle it. I mean, Hill and Waddle just running at your guys. I mean, there were busted coverages, sure, but that's pressure being applied to that defense. It's not just the Ravens going out and falling asleep, and sure they did. I mean, that was a flurry. I mean, it was like boom, boom, boom. The Dolphins are back in this thing, and all of a sudden, holy shit, they're leading this game. Like, it was nuts.
Yeah, it wasn't a knockout punch, right? It was a classic Chuck Liddell combo to put somebody away. This was the best weekend of football in a really long time because the Eagles won. If the Eagles would have lost tonight, I think both of us would have been on here and been like, yeah, man, Tua went off and it was a cool game, but it was whatever.
Some other news besides that, obviously Trey Lance breaks his ankle. He's going to be out for the year. Jimmy Garoppolo will now be the starting quarterback for the rest of the year for the 49ers. So let's talk about that real quick before we get into who's in, who's bad. I don't know. I'm going to come on here and, Tyson, I don't want to dance on your grave and say, I was right about Jimmy Garoppolo over Trey Lance and all that. But here's the reality. And I feel bad for the kid. He seems like a good guy, but this was not the right time for the Niners to make the move to Trey Lance, in my opinion. Now I know you were telling me we had it got a little heated on the show one time because you were like, no, Trey Lance takes this team to the next level. Garoppolo can't do it, which I disagreed on. I thought it was a mistake for the Niners to move off of him at this point in time. I think Jimmy Garoppolo makes his team much better and a very interesting contender, which I know you mentioned at the top of the show. So I want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, one thing I want to start off with the Trey Lance stuff first. I gotta defend the kid. He got a weird game a year ago, and then he got a monsoon last week, and then he got 2 drives this week, and the jury's out. Or the jury's in, I guess, on the kid. Everyone, this guy sucks, and he broke his ankle. He's not going to get a chance to defend himself for 365 days, and if Jimmy Garoppolo takes his Niners team to the heights that they're able to reach, Trey Lance won't get his fucking job back. And that's the thing that I think is most interesting to me with the Jimmy G situation. If this team goes to the NFC title game, does Trey Lance walk back into the starting job? Are we doing this again? Are we doing a third year of this? We can't.
No, right? At that point,
but what do you sell him for? You sent the farm to go get him. You either have him as a backup or you admit you lost. And you sell him for a second to the Buccaneers or whoever.
I think you got to admit you lost on the kid, and you just made a mistake, and you try to be aggressive, and it didn't work out. It happens. It's the worst thing that you can do is try to prove that you're right when you clearly made a mistake, and that's fine, man. Mistakes happen all the time when you draft, and I think they got over aggressive on it. I think to your point, if you're picking that high, I know a lot of people say Mac Jones. Is Mac Jones that much of an upgrade realistically over Jimmy Garoppolo? No, they were going for the home run. They wanted to get the next Josh Allen or the next Mahomes. Could it be this kid? Sure. The problem is it feels like the timeline's over. Like he was sitting on the bench waiting, got his shot, got hurt. It looked like they were moving on from Jimmy. Turns out the Niners didn't have a trade partner for him, kept him, and it's a good thing they did because if Lance breaks his ankle and you have Nate Sudfeld as your starter for the rest of the year, this team is cooked. And I think that's when you run into problems in the locker room and in the front office. Seriously, guys, if we had Garoppolo with this roster, we were just in the NFC Championship game last year. Now you have Nate Sudfeld as our quarterback because our guy got hurt. You want to move off from Garoppolo? I think that's where there have been some issues. So this may be a blessing in disguise for the team and the organization as a whole. This feels super bad for Trey Lance, honestly. Like it's a shitty situation.
When I texted you yesterday, and I was just like, this feels like this is going to be the story of his career, is that he had the one shot and he had, a week and a half or whatever it is essentially to prove himself. Didn't work, broke his ankle, lost his team. And then, we're moving into a 2023 draft class who's supposed to have as many first round picks as that 2020 class just had. There's not as many QB needy teams in the league right now because it feels like everybody's got somebody that they believe in. And so he might just be stuck in no man's land. Like he might have to be the guy that goes and fills in somewhere else to get a job back. And that's going to be a really, really weird career arc and might be a fun story to tell 20 years from now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, just thinking about who could potentially be in the market. I mean, Giants.
Would you, if you're
Seahawks,
Houston, you'd rather have Davis Mills, right?
Probably at this point, yeah.
I mean, if you're Indianapolis, you might take a swing.
I see and we were texting about that. That's an interesting one.
But they've been doing this now for a few years, and it feels almost like if you're Indianapolis, you got to go get the guy that you want in the draft. Like you have to say whatever to all this. And if that's the case, Brad, then maybe Frank Reich's not the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts.
I think there's a question we had about it, and let's move into who's good, who's bad, to kind of take an overarching look at where we're at in the league. And I'll stay on that. I think Frank Reich's on the hot seat. I think he's a good coach. I think everybody kind of calling him shitty or he sucks. Like the situation he's been put in by that front office is not done, and ownership. I can't say anything about the situation without mentioning Jim Irsay is the one who wanted to get rid of Carson Wentz immediately. That Jim Irsay has been the one who's wanted to recycle these quarterbacks or go get them off the scrap heap. And it's ultimately been a Chris Ballard decision to, like you said, not go get your guy in the draft or not be aggressive enough to go get a young guy and quit getting these players who are either on their second chance or kind of later in their career.
They're on their last chances. And that's the issue, right? And that was the issue with Carson Wentz. And I feel like we're the only people that I heard on when we were talking about it on here trying to explain to people that Matt Ryan is not an upgrade over Carson Wentz. They're different versions. They're different sides of the same coin. The floor's the same. The ceiling's probably the same. It's just the way you go about getting there. And that was what is so baffling to offload one to go and get the other. And then now we're watching the shock Pikachu face, right? It's Carson Wentz throwing for 500 yards. And, they win one, they lose one. Because that's who he is. And that's who he was a year ago. With Matt Ryan, you've now limited, in my opinion, the explosiveness of this offense, the absolute top end of it. And I know they're missing Michael Pittman this week, and that's fine. But they didn't score any points against the Jacksonville Jaguars. 8 in a row, they've lost to Jacksonville in Jacksonville. I don't know if the Colts are bad, but I don't think they're good.
And that's what I was going to ask. Like, how much do we downgrade this Colts team? He's sitting out.
I never had him up there with everybody else. I've always been.
Well, we had him as a preseason division winner, though. Like, are we moving off of that?
It's a 9-win division, and that's always been the deal. At least that's my opinion. I don't think the Texans are any good. I don't think the Jaguars make a huge leap here, and I think the Titans are bad. And I said that a couple of weeks ago, and I've watched it the last couple of weeks, and I feel better now than I did preseason. Derrick Henry looks a little bit. I don't want to say it, man, because I don't want it to be true.
Well, I mean, the problem is you don't have an A.J. Brown, and so you can stack the box.
But he's taking longer to get going.
He is.
He's taking longer to hit the hole, right? And that's the issue. That's a scary part if you're Tennessee, because if he doesn't run for 1,500 yards, they score 7 points. That's what this offense is.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee's bad. I agree with you, man. The Colts, it's hard for me to downgrade them off of this because here's the problem. Frank Reich's teams progressively get better over the course of the season. My question about it is he going to have a long enough leash with that insane owner Irsay, or is he going to make a rash decision? It's like if you do that, you're coming in the season expecting to win the division. Why would you fire your coach now? Like that would make no sense to me on that. I'm curious on this one if you think they're good. How about the Detroit Lions at 1-1? Looks like, I mean, they played the Eagles better than the Vikings did tonight. That's true. They looked impressive against the Commanders at home. They pushed them around, and the second half, got a little dicey. But Goff looked good. I thought the defense was solid for the most part. Are they a good team in your mind?
What is that like? Let's set the qualifier here. What's it good for the Detroit Lions? Because we said it at the beginning of our preseason breakdowns of divisions. I think our best case was it third in the division or second in the division. Did we ever? I think it was third. I think I think
third. Yeah, because Vikings Packers were the.
And if that's the case, then it's a smash. Then they're good because they're way better than the Bears. They're way better than the Bears. So if that was the best case for us preseason, then I'm really confident that they're good. But they might be like a 7-win football team this year. They're physical. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a monster.
Star, man.
He's a monster. TJ Hawkinson is – we're still waiting for it, man. We're still waiting for it.
But he might just be average.
Yeah, he really could be. DeAndre Swift is that guy. Mm-hmm. He's that guy. That was who I picked to be the fantasy MVP this year, I guess, if you could say. I think he's going to be a box score monster. But the lines are physical. The offensive line is awesome. And the offense is fun. What they're running is interesting, and it's exotic for the Detroit Lions football team that's basically for 15 years been pretty much the same.
Right. That's the thing. I think they're a good team right now. And again, it's 2 weeks in. I mean, I guess I'm just not projecting further than what I'm watching now. I think they're a solid, good football team right now. I think they limit a lot of mistakes. It doesn't seem like Jared Goff is doing much to put himself in harm's way, which is, you couldn't say a lot about the last couple years with Jared Goff.
Where is Jared Goff is there a Jared Goff line now? Are we moving off the Kirk Cousins line and going to a Jared Goff line?
Oh man.
The dude's been dealing, man.
I know, man.
Games in a row. If you go back to last year.
Is Goff, would you take Goff over Cousins?
Yeah.
You would right now? I would too, I think. People hate Jared Goff for some reason. And
I hate Kirk Cousins, so that one was easy. By the way, the difference between Jalen Hurts and Kirk Cousins is $30 million. $30 million.
And 47 guaranteed next year for Kirk, so good luck. Here's a couple teams I want to discuss. Bengals are 0-2, Raiders are 0-2. These are two teams coming in with massive expectations coming into the season. Obviously, Bengals off of a Super Bowl appearance and the Raiders with massive upgrades here. Starting off 0-2, not great. I mean, Raiders with a negative 11-point differential, Bengals with a 6, so it's not normally something that pops out for you as a differential and for a 0-2 team to start where you're like, yeah, these guys are really bad. But I mean, I will say the Panthers have a negative 5-point differential and the Falcons do as well. They're both 0-2. So both worse than those teams. Where do we put the Bengals and Raiders right now and how we look at these teams right now?
Well, here's one thing I want to say on the Bengals, and it feels like the run to the Super Bowl last year gave this team some sense of, we don't have to be urgent because we'll just win this thing in the fourth quarter. And for 2 weeks now, it almost felt like they were playing for the last drive. Like the entire game was going to come down. They're going to get the ball last. They're going to score because that's what we do. And it didn't work out that way either time. And so I still think the Bengals are a good team. But Joe Burrow has to hold on to the ball for a less amount of time than the 10 seconds it seems that he has the ball every time. And part of that's on play calling. Part of that is because it takes 11 seconds for some of these things to develop. Like, realistically, though, if it's a route tree, if it's a concept, it's going to take you 3 seconds to get open. Two guys are covered. By the time Burrow's on his third read, four and a half seconds have gone by. There's very few offensive lines in the NFL that will hold consistently for 4, 5, 6 seconds. And that's the issue. Jamar Chase could have had 100 yards on slants alone yesterday. T. Higgins could have 100 yards on comebacks. So I think those things will get ironed out. For the Raiders, I don't know what the hell is going on because that looked like two different teams, but both weren't very good teams. The Chargers game was encouraging, but it was like, okay, this is the Devontae Adams show. He's just going to get the ball every time. And since he's, one of the best, it's going to work out. And then yesterday, the defense was the one that stepped up when it mattered. Because, again, the offense is turning the ball over because this is a Josh McDaniels offense. And we thought we were going to get something new and fresh. And it just looks like a weird version of the Patriots offense. Devontae Adams walking out of the game yesterday with 2 catches is an overcorrection. That can't happen.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah.
That can't happen. And he went from a 34% target share to an 18% target share. week over week. That can't happen. And for the Raiders, what we talked about preseason was that they went all in on the positions, the areas where it didn't feel like they needed the upgrade that they went out and got compared to the additions they made to the areas that actually sucked. Like getting Devontae Adams is awesome, and when you have the chance to do that, you go do it, but not at the expense of offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, and defensive backs, which are all things that you needed, and now you can't afford.
Yeah. As far as the Raiders go, people are like, and listen, man, and I don't hate Derek Carr. I think he's a good. No, I think he's a good quarterback. But it's always these type of games, dude. And this is what I'm talking about. They look so good in the first quarter. They've scored 3 points in the second half against a Cardinals team who basically could have quit at halftime.
Yeah.
Like, dude, and you look at his stat line, it looks so shiny and so good. It's just something missing with Carr all the time where it's just that one thing you need out of him. Maybe it's a third down conversion to get that momentum going in the second half. He just can't do it. And it's just always something missing with them. And yeah, I get it, man. I've said this. If he wasn't the quarterback of the Raiders during this mess that's been going on since he's been there, moving cities and the nonsense with Gruden and whatever going on, this team would be probably the worst over the past 10 years. I mean, worse than the Jets, worse than the Giants. He's held this thing together. But I think we elevate him, I think, a little bit too high, in my opinion. That's why I'm always a little bit quick to kind of pull it back down, be like, yeah, but what are the plays he makes when he needs to make them? Like, you watch Josh Allen and Mahomes, or any of these other guys, maybe not at that level. Like, they do things that Carr repeatedly just can't do or seems to miss in the most inopportune times.
Somebody that you haven't been holding down, and somebody you've been championing for a few years now, I had their moment. I had their Derek Carr moment, but they showed up, Brad. And your boy Tua went off.
Yeah, he did.
Just ridiculous. And I'm just
going to... how good that feels, Tyson?
I'm going to let you rev up for a second. 468 yards, 6 touchdowns, 28-point comeback. Beat a team in the Ravens who we haven't got to them, but they're good. I think the Ravens are good. I think the Ravens, right now in my mind, are still the favorite to me to win the AFC North. And for 45 minutes, the Ravens looked like a much better team than the Dolphins. And then Tua came over and took it over, man.
Dude, it felt so, and I of course, people are just so ridiculous on social media. You just can't listen to these morons out there. Now, I don't know how you can discredit what that kid did. But he was unbelievable.
2 picks. He threw 2 whole interceptions.
And he had that one little underthrow by a yard. Like, oh, yeah, Mahomes has never done that in his life. Marino's never underthrown anybody ever. It's what he did that game was, I think, what people like me who have been a big fan of Tua and just watched him at Alabama and thought it could translate to the next level. That was what we were picturing, right? Insanely accurate on deep balls and insanely accurate across the middle. He finally is in an offense with Mike McDaniel who puts him in these positions to use his strengths. And I get it, man. Those guys were wide open at times, Waddle and Hill. He has to make the throw to him if he's going to get these yards, if he's going to get these touchdowns. And it felt so good, man, saying, hey, listen, he has no offensive line for the past 2 years. His weapons are Devontae Parker and Joe Schmo and some guy who bags my groceries now. And it's just, now you finally get him some weapons similar to kind of Jalen Hurts and what we're witnessing in the Eagles, where when you actually have dudes on the outside, it helps their quarterback out a lot. And so I felt a little vindicated, and I'm not going to go crazy on here and be like, wow, he's the best in the league now, obviously. Like, no, like, he's still got some things he's got to improve on and things to work on. But he's now in an environment and a situation where I think you're going to see a lot more of these games than some in the past where you're like, can Tua play in this league?
How nuts is it that these guys are just forever intertwined? All the way back to Bama, right? Back to Jalen Hurts getting pulled. Then Jalen comes back in for him. Jalen transfers. They get drafted. And then they both go through these ups and downs. And then they both have career games in the same week. These dudes are just, they're going to be, hopefully they play in 15 Super Bowls.
Against each other now. That'd be great.
That'd be awesome.
Do you think Gary Danielson's going to tell us about that next week?
I'm sure he will. I'm sure he'll find a way
to.
He'll bring it up, and then he'll find a way to slip in, just some random slot receiver that played in the 70s. for Purdue.
Oh man! All right, let's go over these 1-1 teams as we kind of slot these in, and I'll kind of just throw them at you. We already talked about one in the Lions, but Niners, I think there's questions about, and we kind of discussed that a little bit with Jimmy G. Rams, we discussed a little bit, and Ravens, you touched on. I agree with you. I there's nothing that changes my mind, and in fact, I think you can upgrade the Ravens a bit offensively.
And
what they did.
I mean, Rashad Bateman in week 1 caught a broken touchdown, right?
Yep.
In week 2, he plucked something out of the air and went 75 yards. That adds a different element to this offense that we didn't think was there. If you look back at Bateman tape in college, I mean, he'd house stuff, sure, at Minnesota, but it wasn't like that. That was like the most electric play I think I've ever seen him make. And I've been watching a lot of – I love Bateman, and I think that if he can keep improving, the volume has to come, obviously. But I think it's a good way to earn trust by taking 75-yard, the 7-yard pass of the house.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. Let's go AFC West. Let's talk about the Chargers and the Broncos, both sitting at 1-1. Completely different performances so far in their first 2 games. I think viewed completely different based on their first 2 games. But they're both 1-1. So let's kind of just talk it here, and I'll just throw that out there to you, Tyson. You kind of take it where you want.
Well, I think the Chargers are good, and Herbert's good. And Herbert's banged up, but look, we overrated how much the Chiefs were going to struggle to start the year. It was like, oh, they're not going to be able to play offense without Tyreek Hill. Andy Reid's called a lot of offenses, and only the last few years has he had Tyreek Hill. He's going to be fine. So the Chiefs being good, I'm not surprised by, because Patrick Mahomes is the best. If he's not the best, he's one of the best. And I think the Chargers have that in Herbert, and that's why I'm confident in them. The Broncos are bad.
You think so? Okay.
I think the Broncos are bad. I think Russell Wilson, to this point, looks like garbage. And we won't say it out loud, but like Jared Goff's playing better than him. Carson Wentz is playing better than him. And look, I know he's on a new team. He played the Seahawks and the freaking Texans, and he couldn't put up any points. What was he, 14 for 31? And you said that you think Frank Reich's on the hot seat. I was texting you after week 1 that Hackett doesn't make it to Christmas. And I didn't feel any better than after that game. When your home crowd is counting down the play clock like it's March Madness at the free throw line or something.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Every single box you could check for what a bad coach looks like, he's hit through the first 2 weeks of his tenure.
Dude, it's bad. I mean, he looks in way over his head, Nathaniel Hackett.
Dude, the guy drowned in the first half of his first game. They just got to go pull the body out. He can't do this. He's not cut for this. At least at this point in his career, I don't know Nathaniel Hackett. I don't want to say anything to Nathaniel Hackett, but dude, this is ridiculous. Every single time that they break the huddle, there's 8 seconds left on the play clock. And then they're running 2 motions, and it's like, no wonder you're disjointed. Get to the line of scrimmage with 16 seconds left if you want to have Judy go back and forth 3 times. What are we doing?
And so apparently, during the Seahawks game, he came out and said after he's trying to limit the amount of communication on the headset because there's too much going on, and it took a while to get the play set. So he only wants to hear himself on the. You're at home. It's still happening. How? Like it just. And you can be a great offensive coordinator in this league. It's the difference between being a great coordinator, offensive or defense, and being the head coach of an NFL football team. There's 32 jobs here, Tyson. This guy can't handle it. I mean, he's in way over his head.
The thing that will stick out the most to me, this guy could win 5 Super Bowls. And what I'm going to remember about Nathaniel Hackett is in week 1, he tried to kick 68 yards or whatever?
64-yarder.
Whatever it was. And then last week in Denver, he decides that it's 4th and 1. 58-yard field goal, huge leg kicker. It's like he's booming 60-yard kicker all the time. And then he decides to punt, but he takes too long to make the decision. So then they get a delay game call.
Oh, yeah.
And he punts again. It was like, dude, a week ago you were playing for 64 at sea level or whatever. You're a mile high. Like, what do we do? It's good when coaches learn from their mistakes. It's not good when they learn from it just to make a new one.
And that's the thing. So so when we talk about are the Broncos bad, is Wilson bad? Listen, they can figure this thing out. We're 2 games in, right? And again, we don't like to overreact on this show. Like we're not hot takey. We're not hot take artists. But
But the dude
We're just
sucks.
saying from what we've seen, it's bad, and the Broncos have looked bad. I mean, to lose to the Seahawks when you fumble when you're on the goal line 5 times, they don't have a touchdown from inside the 5. They've been down there 7 times. Like it's ridiculous. Like I don't know what the hell he's doing, and he's calling play. It's they're in over their skis right now. Now again, they can turn this thing around, right? You have Russell Wilson, and since he broke his finger, he hasn't been good in the NFL. So that's the question. Like, if can he get better? Now, him and Sutton have a good connection right now. Judy got a little banged up. It looks like he can come back. We just got to wait to see if this offense is going to take off, because the defense played better, I thought, against the Texans. But again, to your point, it's the Texans, and a team with such high expectations shouldn't be struggling this much, and us still considering them a good team. I think right now, yeah, you can say the Broncos are not a good team right now through 2 weeks.
This is awesome.
The Broncos being bad?
No, just being able to do this in week 2 of the NFL season, and then we'll be able to do it in week 4. We can do this so many more times.
Oh, yeah. Well, because week 4, then all of a sudden the Broncos are going to pounce them by 60. Hackett looks amazing.
They'll be 3-1. Yeah, he's got it nailed.
Anybody else that jumps out to you right now? Because I think, the Patriots, whatever. I think the Steelers stink at 1-1. I don't think they're good. I think they're lucky that they're not 0-2 and considered one of the worst teams in the NFL. I mean, anybody else kind of in that jumbo? We only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams that are 2-0 right now, and the rest are 1-1 except for 5 0-2 teams. So I mean, it's parity like it always is in the NFL to start.
Well, yeah. I mean, we know Packers are good. I'm pretty sure that the Bears are bad. Yep. I'm pretty sure actually that like the 4 teams that we thought would be the worst were the Bears, Seahawks, Texans, and Falcons. And they've looked weirdly competitive to start the year, but then they all kind of came back to earth at certain points of their games.
The Falcons have looked a lot better than people expected.
That was scary, man. And shout out Arthur Smith for telling everybody it's not fantasy football for why he doesn't throw it to Kyle Pitts. It's like, dude, you took the guy 4th overall. We're not asking about fantasy football. We're wondering about your return on your investment. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that was perplexing to say the least. But hey, man, he's got it going with Marcus Mariota. That offense looks way better than I thought. Drake London looks like he can play in this league.
Yeah, that is a monster. He looks like young Mike Evans without the he's not fed up with everything yet. He's not attacking corners. How awesome was that, by the way? Every team needs a Mike Evans.
He hates Marshawn Lattimore.
Which is so cool.
I mean, he was like walking off the field and just turns around and was like, oh no.
And that's how you see he said it's Tom Brady, what do you want me to do? And it's like, you were waiting for an excuse that whole game. Remember when Jameis poked him in the head and he turned around and then he just went
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, Mike Evans suspended 1 game. He's appealing it right now. We're gonna see.
By the way, we gotta talk about that. That's weird, huh? That John Runyon is the VP of that stuff. Like, that's so funny. It's just weird as an Eagles fan, and then obviously his kid plays for the Packers, so that's the interesting thing why he gets his suspension.
Teammates with Brady at Michigan.
That's what I was gonna say. It's so funny that's like people are sleuthing, trying to figure out. Oh, it's got to be conspiracy.
It's got to be, right. That's everything on the internet nowadays. Anything before you want to get out of here, Tyson? That we want to touch on before we get out of here.
I just want to point out Kevin O'Connell was drafted in 2008 to be Tom Brady's backup. He is now a head coach in the NFL, and Tom Brady won a game on Sunday as the starting quarterback.
That is insane. That is a great little nugget right there.
Do you think that if he gets divorced, he actually plays the 50? I bet you. I bet that if Tom Brady gets divorced, exactly.
Oh, he's stubborn, man. He's like, all right, you're gonna divorce me over this. Fuck you. I'm gonna play till I'm 70.
I'm still the best. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, geez, man. Little show programming note here if you're listening. Going forward during the football season, Tyson and I got something going on here. Mondays will be NFL recap. Wednesdays will be college recap and college look ahead. Talk about early lines, things we like, as well as breaking down any top 25 action or crazy upsets. And then Friday is going to be our early NFL look ahead. So we're going to break down projections going forward if we have any bets in as well. So we're going to get that to you. Chalkboard, join us. We are starting to get it rolling, Tyson. We got our prop that hit again. We're now rolling this thing over. That was our goal from the beginning.
Yeah, and last night we had A.J. Dillon over 49.5 yards. and he made a sweat. He hit 50.
Oof.
And tonight we got Devontae Smith over 3.5 catches. These are all courtesy of FanDuel, the over-unders. And that was hit in like the first quarter. So that was good. That was good to just get done with that one.
It did. And we were close on our little fun SGP we also put out on our Twitter as well.
If we was only Eagles players, we would have made a bunch of money. But then we thought, like, we can't just only do Eagles players because there's no way they come out and look like dynamite. And then they look like dynamite, man. It's a good night to be a Birds fan.
Absolutely. And we got other stuff coming up. I mean, we got MLB playoffs we're getting ready for, so we'll have some picks there. Tyson's Mets just qualified for the playoffs or clinched a spot, which is amazing. Yankees getting that done soon. I mean, it's gonna be good for the boys on here. And then I got soccer stuff going on too as we get closer and closer. You know, Premier League, yada yada, Champions League stuff, and now we got Nations League. So join our chalkboard, and by doing that, you can just follow us on our social medias. We're gonna be posting it all the time. Our bets as well. Instagram @_ the roundtable pod _ TikTok is the same. If you are a TikToker, follow us on there. And then our Twitter @TRT _ pod. So we really appreciate you guys listening. Like, subscribe, and share. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, share with your friends. We love the support that you guys give us. And don't be a stranger. Feel free to comment. And that's what that chalkboard is for as well. You know, we want to kind of build a little community and something fun that we can chat about sports on.
Just get rich with the boys.
That's the goal. That is the goal. All right. We appreciate you guys listening. Until next time, everybody. Peace.